Hey guys, this is Jacko Buddy with breakblock.org, and today we're going to be looking at the Game Maker 2D engine, which you can either get from the company Yo-Yo Games, and it's also available on Steam. And I'm actually running the Steam version because I like some of the features it has, and just being able to run it and update it through Steam. Now, this tutorial is meant for and really designed for people who have never worked in Game Maker before, and also people who've never had any programming experience before but want to know how to make some of their own games. And so today we're going to be making a small project called Maze Man. And Maze Man is a very simple game concept. Basically, we're going to make a little character, and we're going to make some walls, and we're going to put him inside this maze, and then he's just going to move in a certain direction until he hits a wall, and just going to have to try and navigate this maze. Very simple, not exactly the most exciting game, but it's a good, simple project that we can use to really begin to learn the Game Maker engine. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and start up your Game Maker engine if you want to work along with me, or else you can just watch on my screen as I do everything. I do suggest that as you watch this video, you do it yourself on your version of Game Maker Studio if you already purchased it, and you can just pause this video, do what you need to do, whatever step I just explained, and then you can unpause the video, move to the next step. It's a very good way to learn some programming if you're new to the programming field, or if you're just watching to get a grasp for Game Maker, then that's fine too. So what you have here is your work area where you're going to be working from now to the end of time in Game Maker. And basically this big, broad, light gray area in the middle is like your workspace. And everything that you do, whether you're writing code or you're building a level or designing characters, is all going to be done within this big gray space right here. Now, at the bottom below that, you have this dark gray block, and that is pretty much your compile information. Whenever you create your program or create your game to go to run your game after you're done programming it, it's going to run, say, a bunch of stuff that really doesn't matter to you unless you get an error, in which case this bottom area will give you your errors. Now, a very important and a very cool key feature to Game Maker is this left panel over here that runs vertically along the screen. This is where all of the resources that make up your game is stored, which is really cool because in conventional programming, you have to remember these folders and these long paths, and then you have to enter them in by hand, but Game Maker automatically organizes your stuff for you. And we're going to use that a little bit in this tutorial. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to set up our sprites, which is going to go into the sprite folder right there on the top. You can see I just clicked it there. Sprites are images. That's all they really are. They can be a still image, they can be an animation, whatever you really want it to be. It can be a logo, a character, an effect, whatever you think would be good to go in that folder that you need to use. So what we're going to do to create a sprite, there's two ways you can do that. I'm going to go and show you both. You can right click where on the name sprites, and you're going to get this option right here where you can say create sprite. And that's one way to make it. Or you can come to the top right here and you have this little guy that is certainly not any kind of ripoff of Pac-Man, and you can just click that and boom, you have a new sprite. And it's going to bring this up, and this is your sprite properties window. A few things that you need to look at here. First of all, your name. So we're going to go ahead and name this sprite something that means something to us. I usually like to do SPR at the beginning of my sprites, just so when I'm writing code, I know that it's a sprite. And I'm going to do an underscore. I'm going to call it player. So we're going to do SPR underscore player. Now, if you already have a sprite image made, you can do load sprite right there, and you can pull that image in, and you'll be ready to go. But in our case, we're going to go ahead and make our own sprite, and so we're going to hit edit sprite. And the rest of the stuff along the side here has to do with collisions and putting certain points on your character as like your origin point. None of that is really something we're going to be looking at today. In later tutorials and in the future of Breakblock, as we get more advanced with our tutorials, then we will begin to look into some of that. But today, all you need to do is hit edit sprite. And it's going to bring up your sprite editor. And this is where, in like an animation, you can see all your individual frames and you can manage things there. You can even click this little box here, show preview, and that will actually play your animations for you. Once you load an animation, you can adjust the animation speed down here. But we're not going to be using an animation, as like I said, it's a very simple, basic, easy program for beginners. So what you're going to do, you're going to go ahead and either go to File and New right there, or I usually just click this little button right here, the little paper with a plus sign, and that's going to make a new image. And see, it's called image 0. You could just leave it as that. That really doesn't matter. You can double click that, and it's going to open up your image editor. And the first thing I always do when I'm working on an image as small as this, which is a 32 by 32 image, which is GameMaker's default size, is I hit plus a few times just so I can get real nice up and close on this image. And so we're going to make a little character. And so I think for mine, I'm going to do it yellow over there. And I'm going to pick like my circle tool. And this works just like MS Paint or any of those little simple programs that you use in Windows. It does all the same stuff. You got your filling tool, you got your line tool, everything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw a real basic crude looking character together. Just for the sake of the tutorial. This is by no means something I would go publishing on Steam or another game platform and try and sell it, but we'll make a little smiley face guy. And that's going to be my character. So I'm going to hit, when you're done, you're going to hit this little check mark right here. So if you need a minute to make your image, you can go ahead and pause the video, throw your character together, and then whenever you're ready, play the video again, and we're going to go ahead and hit done. Actually, one thing I will go back and show you real quick in here, if you're ever interested backing up your stuff, you can hit File and Save as Ping Image, PNG, and that will actually let you save it as an external file. But if you just do the check mark, and then you do a check mark, and then at the bottom you hit your OK check mark, it's all saved, and you can see now your little character is right there on the left side of the screen underneath Sprite. And so you have SPR Player in your Sprites folder. So we need another sprite as well to go with him, so we're going to go ahead and make another sprite, and I'm going to call it SPR_wall. And we're going to do edit again, and we're going to make our new image, and we're going to go in, and this is going to be the wall that our character has to navigate through. So I'm going to pick, I guess, this red right here, and a filling tool, do that, but now it's going to be really, really blinding. So I'm going to do a little darker, and then I'm going to take a darker red, and do a second thick line, and we're going to go like this, kind of put some little bounds on the block, just to give it a little personality, instead of just a big red nasty looking square. At least it's got what we can call some shading on it. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK on that, and now we got both of our sprites right here. On your left side, you can see their name and their image. Now, an image by itself is going to do nothing. It's got no coding. It has nothing whatsoever. So what we have to do now is we have to make what's called an object. And if you look below all these other folders right there, you have your objects folder. And your objects folder is where all the objects, imagine that, in your image or in your program are going to go. And so just like sprites, you can either right click and hit create object, or what you'll eventually probably start doing as you learn the shorthand way is just hit the little circle right there. The little circle is always GameMaker's symbol for an object. Just like with sprites, it's the little Pac-Man. So we're going to go and hit our circle, and we're going to create a new object. And you're going to get this box right here. And this, my friends, is where you're going to beat your head against walls for days and nights to come. Because this is where you do all of your programming, or at least most of your programming, and a lot of just manipulating stuff, and you're going to get bugs and issues and have to fight with them. But today we're going to do some very simple coding, and we're not even really going to write code. GameMaker does offer the ability to write your own code in a language called GML, GameMaker language, but today we're just going to use their drag and drop system, which is their basically system made if you don't want to do programming, which is one of their features in GameMaker that's pretty cool. And so I usually start an object with obj underscore, just like a sprite, just so when I'm coding in later tutorials and in later projects, I know that it's going to be an object. And we're going to do it player, just like our sprite. Now you see, if I had just called it player and I just called my image player, it would actually allow me to do that. But in programming, it's going to get very confusing, and I might even get some errors because both of them have the same name. And GameMaker may not be sure which one I'm trying to call, but now they're SPR player and OBJ player, so they're completely different names as far as GameMaker is concerned. So what we're going to do now is, you see the sprite box right here. you have to assign a sprite to this if you want to be able to see it. And so you click this little button right here, the little drop down menu, and it's going to pop out. And you're going to hit SPR_player. And there's our little smiley face character or whatever image you made right there. Now, two things that are real cool that was recently added in Game Maker Studio and was in none of the old versions. You can actually from here create a new sprite, or you can go and edit your sprite. And that's real cool because in the past you'd always have to go in and you'd go make your object and you go, hey, I forgot to make my sprite, and you got to get out of the object. Or even you can run both. Like I can come over here and double click and see I got two windows, but then your windows stack up. But now they made it where it's a lot more convenient to just go in and edit your sprite or make a new sprite without having to dig through folders and folders of sprites later when you get a large project. A few things to note on here. We have our visible box, and we definitely want our character to be seen, so we're going to make sure that visible is checked. Solid, we could do him as solid, but the solid function in Game Maker is a little funny sometimes and a little buggy. I usually like to try and just hard code my own collisions, and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's real simple. But I find whenever you take control of your own instead of letting Game Maker do it, you're usually better off because you're going to have unforeseen consequences if you try and do too much stuff automatically. Persistent, we don't really need to worry about in this case, but basically if you have multiple rooms or levels or areas in your game, then whatever values you set in this object will carry over to each room instead of resetting at the beginning of each room. And then uses physics. That's another new Game Maker Studio feature. We're not really going to get into that today. And then your depth is a decider over what objects lie on top of other objects. If you leave every object at 0, then whatever object was placed last is on top every time. And so basically if I place two characters and then I move one character underneath the other character, he'll go behind him, which is a cool feature in 2D games because you could have like a tree and your character can go hide behind the tree or in a bush or something like that. And so that's when the depth comes into play. Or if you add a background, you're going to want your background to be a really far back depth, so that way it's behind everything instead of on top of everything. Parent and mask we're going to save for another day as well. A real cool thing in Game Maker, if you need to review what's in your object, you can do show information, and see it brings up this little box here, and this is just all the information about my object, which doesn't look like much, but I'll show you this again in a little bit and it's going to be a lot longer. So now, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a second object because we need that. And so we're going to do a new object, obj_wall, and we're going to bring in our wall sprite. And I guess just for the sake of the fact that we're making a big brick wall, I'm going to go ahead and check solid. Really not going to matter because solid objects only collide if they're both solid, so it's not really going to matter. But usually when I make a big hard wall that I want nothing getting out, just for good measure I go ahead and hit solid because it's not going to affect anything unless two objects are solid. And my walls are going to be bounding our room, so we don't want anything getting out. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on that. And now we have our sprites and we have the sprites tied to our objects, but we can't do anything because we don't have any levels. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a room. And you have a room folder right there, right underneath your objects folder. And just like before, you can either right click and do new room, or I'm going to go up here and you got the big square right there, and that's going to be your new room. So I'm going to click that and it's going to bring this guy up. And this is your room editor. Room editors is another real cool feature of Game Maker because you actually get to build your levels and build your areas rather than trying to code them in and saying one line at a time, oh, I need a wall here, and I need a wall here, and I need a wall here. You can just click and put stuff down. And so I'm going to go ahead and maximize this window so we can see everything that's going on a lot better. A few things to note: if you hold down the left mouse button, it's going to place an object and let you move it around like that in your space. And so that's a real good trick for moving on. But once you put it down, it's going to kind of stop. But then, starting with Game Maker Studio, you can pick it back up with your left mouse button. So you can see I have our little character right here. You select it over in the left, and I just click, and I got him picked up. On top of that, you can right click on that object and you get a bunch of little things like that. If you right click off of him, it does nothing. If you hold down your middle mouse button, you can actually move around this room space freely just by holding down the middle mouse button. And then your mouse wheel will zoom in and out, which is also something new in GameMaker. GameMaker's never had zooming around in the room editor, nor did it ever have this checkered space out here before. That is actually outside of your room, and no matter what you do, whenever you set a camera or when you look at this room, you're not going to see anything in there. So why would I want to do that? Well, if I wanted something to come flying at my character from off screen, then maybe what I would do is have it out here in the zero space. Like I can put, you know, for example, I'll put a little character out here, and he's out here, so he's not even in our game area, but I can have him move left and move inside of it, and the player won't even see him coming until he comes into the room. And so that's a cool feature. Now obviously we only want one player, and we definitely don't want the player outside of a room, so when you want to get rid of him, you can right click him and you can hit delete. And then this guy is not in the right place, so what you can do, your best friends in the room editor is the control and the shift key. You're going to hold down control shift and then right click, and he's gone. And that's real cool. And in case you didn't notice, because I always forget that this exists, over here in the bottom left of your room editor, you can see where our mouse is at, you have all your controls kind of written there. Like you can see if you hold Alt, then it's no snap, which means instead of moving on this grid, see, like I can just drag him around in zero space. And now he's free from that grid, and eventually he gets back on the grid if you let go of Alt, but you hit Alt, and I'm free from the grid again. And so you got that, and then you have a bunch of different little features over there. A real good one I'll show you in a minute is Control Shift left click, but first let's kind of get some stuff built. To change your object, what you can do is either come down to this menu right here, click the little context menu, and pick, like, if I want object wall. And see up here it changes the image, and it gives me some stats right there that you can change. We don't really need to worry about any of those. Or what I usually do is you have this box right here where it's showing your object, just click it, and there's the exact same menu. So I find that learning the shortcuts in GameMaker is a good idea, because you're going to save a lot of time when you could just come up here, click, pick what you want, go, instead of having to come down here and click this and then dig through the menus. Everything's just a little quicker when you learn the short keys, and programming is a long, tedious process already, so you might as well speed it up as much as possible by learning those. So anyway, we want to place some walls, so we're going to go up to our left, and you see we have this grid, and it's 32 by 32, which is the same size as our image. So that's really nice, because then our images will fit perfectly into this grid, and they're not going to overlap, they're not going to be too small, they're the exact size of our grid. Which, by the way, this grid you can actually turn off right here. I know sometimes, like when I want to look at how my room looks, I turn that off. But since all of our stuff is 32 by 32, and our grid is 32 by 32, we might as well leave it on. It just makes our job a little easier. So to place our object, we're just going to left click, left click, left click, and we're going to see we're going to start building a wall. And you want a wall all the way around this level, because we don't want our character getting out of the level and going to a space where you can't see him on camera. I don't know if you've ever played a 3D game where your character falls through the ground or goes through a wall and then you're out in zero space. We don't want that. So we're going to make sure that never happens by bounding this whole area with a big brick wall. Now, just clicking one time like this is going to be a long process. So what we're going to do is going to do Control Shift, and then you're going to hold down the left mouse button and just drag. And you see it's going to place your objects. And then if I go like this, oh, I got off. Control Shift again, hold down the right mouse button, and you can just clean it up. And you don't even have to let go of Control Shift. I can just go off, keep holding it down, do the right mouse, and it's gone again. And so that just speeds up everything a lot, because instead of trying to sit here and click everything and then, oh, I got one bad object, let me right click, delete, right click, delete, right click, delete. No, you can just Control Shift, right click, and it's gone. And you see now we have our whole level bound in this nice pretty little box. And so our character is in no way ever going to get out. And so now, as the name implies, this is Maze Man. Now how can this be Maze Man if we don't have a maze? So I'm going to throw together a little maze. For the sake of teaching a player, it's just a good idea to kind of give them a straight line to follow at the beginning of a game. Some little free, whoop, you did not like when I did that. I'm going to go and hit OK there. I think I put an object on top of another one. Sorry about that. If you ever get that stuff, don't panic, hit OK, keep going. But anyway, so we're going to keep going, and we're going to build our little maze, and I'm not going to click on top of an object like that again, because GameMaker Studio is a little whiny. I'm not going to lie to you. Game Maker Studio likes to cry like a big baby sometimes. So get the error. If it's important, read it. If it's not, whatever. So okay, we got this little maze right here that our character is going to be able to navigate through. And one thing kind of cool that's also new with Studio is this bottom left. You can see you have like a map. It's like a mini map in a video game of this area already. So that's just kind of cool because it's a nice little overview, because if our level's really big, you're not going to be able to see it all on one screen. So that's kind of like an overview of everything. Now, this is actually not necessary in order for this game to work, because our game fits on our screen. But I'm going to go ahead and show you just real quick how to set up the basic default view in Game Maker. What you're going to do is you're going to click your view tab here on the left, and you're going to get this guy, and it looks real intimidating. Don't panic. Hit enable the use of views, and then hit visible room starts. And you see this little, it's hard to see probably in the video, but if you look on your game, there's a bounding box that just went around my room. Like if I turn off the grid, see, you can still see it right there. Let me remove a few of these boxes. See that line? That is a bounding box of the view, and basically that's my camera. And so the camera is going to stay inside of that box even if I increase the size of my room, which, by the way, in settings, right here I can do the width and the height of my room. So like if I increase this width right here to like 2000, then I have all of this part of the level over here. But if I do view, see, like the view just bounds right there, and so this is all still going to be invisible unless I move that camera. And this is going to be covered in a later tutorial. I'm going to do a tutorial where we go over views. But if you look, you can actually like lock the view to a character and have it scroll with the character, so that as you move through the level, the camera will scroll with you. And that way, as you have a huge level, the whole thing getting on the screen at the same time. And see, now our mini map down here even shows everything that's outside of that. So that's where views come into play. So we'll go and just leave that on because it's a good thing just to have. So now what we need to do, we need to add our player. So we're going to get our player and we're going to drop him right here. This looks like a good starting spot, right in that little corner. There's only a real way to go is right. And so that'll be a nice little way to start him out. So when you're done with your room, you're going to go up here just like everything else in Game Maker, hit your little check mark. And boom. And you see we have room 0 right there. And what we're going to do real quick, just for the sake of programming, because I did not even think about this, we're going to double click room 0. And we're going to come back up to this screen right here. And then we're going to go settings, and you have your name of your room. And we're going to do rm_game. It's just a good idea to name everything. Get into the habit now. It helps a lot later. Okay, now you're going to go to the top, and you're going to hit this little green arrow right here. And it's going to compile, and you can see this little window running. None of that matters to us. Boom. Look at that. That's a game right there. But hey, it's not doing anything. Why isn't it doing anything, guys? Oh, because we haven't put any programming into this game yet. We haven't programmed him to move. We haven't programmed anything to happen. And so since this video has been running on about 25 minutes now, just under 25 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and take a break here. We're going to call it quits on this tutorial, but I'm hoping that you got a good perspective of where your sprites are and your objects and your rooms and kind of what each one is and how to mess with this map. And so you can kind of go on there and you can play with you know, the blocks, put them around, and then tune in for part 2 of this tutorial. And I'm going to make this character move, and we're going to lock him to where when you're moving one way, you can't move another way until he stops. And so that way we can make these complex mazes where you have to figure out the right way to move your character to get him navigate through the maze. And then we're even going to put an end goal on the maze, and we might put a few little traps on there to catch the player as well. So make sure to tune in for part 2, but until then, everyone have a good day and happy programming.